Okay, we're live, so we're back online with our regularly scheduled council meeting. And the next motion that comes on the floor, no, I got a report from in camera, my apologies. So council met in camera and following outcomes were brought forward. In camera minutes of December 12th, 2022 were adopted as circulated. Direction was provided to staff on planning matters, labor relation matters, and committee and board applications. Appointments will be made in open session. Specifically, we will be adding a motion 5.2, which is in regards to operations report SR-007-23, which is municipal waste site hours of operation, as well as making committee board appointments for the Leeds and Thousand Islands Public Library Board. And those individuals will be Brenda Lawley, Kathy Sawyer Griffin, Carol Rogers, Pierre Mercier, Anna Baston, Cindy Healy, and Deborah Damond. Okay, so the motion that comes forward is moved by Deputy Mayor Olkey, seconded by Councillor Grell, that the agenda be adopted as amended, adding 5.2, which is the motion in regards to the waste sites. Okay. Is that okay for the mover and the seconder? I believe Councillor Grell and Councillor Olkey, we're good. Okay, any discussion on the adoption of the agenda? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? And no one was opposed. Thank you. We're carried. Okay, next motion is 5.2, which is operations report SR-007-23 municipal waste site hours of operation. And the recommendation is that council authorize staff to change the hours of operation at each waste disposal site from 8:30 a.m. to 4:45 p.m. to 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. to align with hours within the identified in Article 15 of the collective agreement. And that motion comes forward from Councillor Grell and seconded by Deputy Mayor. Okay. Discussion on this motion. I believe it's very straightforward. We're just aligning with the terms and conditions of the collective agreement. So that is brought forward unless there's anything to add. Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Okay. Next item is consent agenda, and we'll go right into the adoption and receipt of minutes. Moved by Deputy Mayor Olkey, seconded by Councillor Lackey, that the January 9th, 2022 public meeting minutes and Public Planning Act meeting minutes be adopted as circulated, and that the December 12th, 2022 council meeting minutes, December 15th, 2022 special council budget meeting minutes, and January 9th, 2022 committee of the whole meeting minutes be adopted as circulated, and that the November 29th, 2022 committee of adjustment meeting minutes be received and filed. Discussion on this motion. Any errors or omissions in those minutes? I see no hands up. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. So next item is staff reports. And the motion comes from Deputy Mayor Olkey and seconded by Councillor Lackey that council approve the staff reports as recommended at the January 9th, 2023 committee of the whole meeting. Is there any item on the staff reports that needs to be pulled and discussed separately? Okay, I see no hands up. You, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a thing in the back of my mind. I think it was the fees for outdoor furnaces. Was that in?
That would be in the general rates and fees bylaw, 8.5.
Yes, so.
Are you just looking for clarification? Because we don't need to pull it.
It was $500. People have those outdoor furnaces to try to save some money. Seemed a bit steep. I wonder if there's a.
Is there any context you can provide?
Any quick context for that, please?
In regards to outdoor furnaces?
Through your worship, there's been no change to what was the previous fee. The fees were brought forward last year through a review. The fee, the $500 is the base fee, and I'd have to look at it to see if you're actually looking at the deposit or if it's the fee, because the base fee for an application was increased to 150 from 140. So I don't
So $500 would be the deposit on getting the application process.
Possibly, I don't have the report in front of me, but there have been no fees proposed to be changed from the fee schedule that was approved last summer through our comprehensive review of the building permit fees to what's in front of council today. It was simply a consolidation of the amendments.
It seemed to me that it was some kind of license to have one.
There's a building permit fee required for a wood-fired appliance, which includes review of the application as well as inspections during the construction phase.
Just a wayward thought with the cost of fuel and heating. A lot of the people who have these things, it's because they were trying to save money on fossil fuels. I know there's periodic reports of people burning garbage in them. I've heard that once going around the ward. They are more common than people think they are perhaps, but again,
So unless you want to have it pulled.
not for that one issue.
Okay.
I just wanted clarification. Thank you.
I can provide you with clarification. I'll look into it.
Okay, thank you.
And no other further items for clarification? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried. Okay, we're moving on to number 9, which is information items. The motion comes forward from Councillor Lackey, seconded by Deputy Mayor Olkey, that the information items be received and filed. We have 3 things, or two items, which is the letter from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing regarding legislative and regulatory changes regarding Ontario housing supply crisis. My mouth is not moving as fast as my brain this evening. An administration report SR-015-23 2022 post-election accessibility report. Are there any discussion on this on those information items? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Oh. So just, okay, go ahead. Sure, I'll allow it.
Where it was concerning.
Your microphone.
Through you, your worship, I was reading there the concept of having an intern in the planning department. Is that a possibility, or am I wrong? And have I misplaced my thinking here?
Through your worship, we're keeping our options open in terms of whether we do recruit for a summer intern if we're not successful in terms of recruiting for the current planner position. So we're keeping our options open for resourcing.
It's something that we could potentially,
Yes.
if we need to. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions in regards to the information items? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. Okay. So the next items are action required items, and the first one comes forward from Councillor Lackey and Deputy Mayor Olkey. Whereas the committee of the whole recommended that council approve the recommendation in report SR-011-23, subject to the recommended bylaw be amended to include provisions regarding the height of a marine facility and sun deck and limitations regarding structures on a sun deck be considered. Be it resolved that the application for zoning bylaw amendment file number D14-2022-011 submitted by Aaron Halpern for the property municipally known as 62 Greer Point Lane be approved, and that council grant 3 readings and final passage to bylaw number 23-010, being a bylaw to amend the bylaw number 07-079 zoning bylaw of the corporation of the township of Leeds in the Thousand Islands. So discussion on this motion. Go ahead, Councillor Fody.
Thank you, your worship. Would I be in line if I suggest we defer action items 10.1 and 10.2?
You would have to, so you're putting forward a motion to defer this?
Both.
No, we got to deal with one at a time.
Okay, then I'll make a
So
motion, we defer.
motion to defer. Do I have a seconder to defer? Don't have a seconder to defer.
Let's think about it a moment, please.
So we're looking for a seconder to defer. There's no discussion on a deferral. It's either we defer it or it stays. So we need a seconder in order to move forward with this or not. So the motion is made by Councillor Fody to defer, seconded by Jameson. So no discussion on a deferral. It would be in favor, for a deferral, or against. All those in favor of a deferral. All those opposed to a deferral. And that's defeated. Okay, so the motion comes back. The original motion comes back as it is not deferred. Original motion is on the floor and it's in regards to 62 Greer Point Lane. Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And the motion is carried. Okay. Next motion on the floor, moved by Councillor Lackey, seconded by Deputy Mayor Olkey. Whereas on December 5th, 2022, Committee of the Whole recommended that Council not approve the recommendation in report SR-156-22 relating to an application D14-2022-009 being an application for a zoning bylaw amendment for the property municipally known as 322 Stratford Road, my apologies. And whereas due to a procedural error, council has not made a decision regarding the said application for zoning bylaw amendment. And whereas on January 9th, 2023, the Committee of the Whole discussion regarding amendments to the recommended bylaw for a similar zoning amendment application noted that provisions should be included to address comments from the Committee of the Whole and the public regarding the height of a marine facility and sun deck and limitations regarding structures on a sun deck. And whereas such limitations have been incorporated into the proposed bylaw number 23-012 relating to the zoning bylaw amendment for the property municipally known as 322 Stratford Road, be it resolved that one, the application for zoning bylaw amendment file number D14-2022-009 for the property municipally known as 322 Stratford Road be approved, and that two, council grant 3 readings and final passage to bylaw number 23-012 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 07-079 zoning bylaw of the Corporation of the Township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands be as amended. So the motion is on the floor and up for discussion. Go ahead, Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. I again make a motion to defer 10.2. Action item 10.2.
So there's a motion to defer made by Councillor Fody. Is there a seconder for that motion? Okay, Jameson. Okay, so the motion to defer is on the floor. So all those in favor of the motion to defer? All those in favor of moving forward? Okay, so the motion to defer is defeated. So the original motion stands. So is there any comments or questions on this particular motion? Go ahead.
Through you, Your Worship, I think I would like on public record here, perhaps someone could give us some background on this procedural error so that the public might better understand why we're moving forward here. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. So as stated in the report, after careful review of the December 12, 2022 council meeting, where planning report SR-15622 was before council, it appears that there were procedural errors made in how this report was handled and the advice provided to council on a motion for reconsideration. In the report, I do explain the motion for reconsideration as stated in our procedural bylaw. In the analysis, I do mention that the purpose of the Committee of the Whole is to make recommendations to council. These are then ratified at council meetings under the consent agenda. So at the December 5th, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting, the recommendation for the report was not supported as the motion was lost. At the December 12th, 2022 council meeting, the recommendation for the report was not ratified When a motion is lost at the committee of the whole, it is required to be ratified at council. Same for if a motion was supported, amended, deferred. Therefore, a motion for reconsideration should have not been introduced because a decision was not made by council at that meeting. The report should have been listed as a separate recommendation that indicated that it was lost under action required items. Thus, the recommendation for the report is listed under action required items in the agenda that you see tonight. And another note as well. So in speaking with council in the past, there is a scheduled review for a procedural bylaw for this quarter of council. And the items discussed in the report going over the procedural clarification will be further reviewed for council's consideration.
And just a follow-up question, if I may. And we were in querying our lawyer. It was mentioned that this correction, if you will, is appropriate in every way. And our lawyer advised that indeed, no matter what wording you put to it, it is correct to bring forward for further ratification to the council meeting, regardless of the fact that a recommendation was defeated. Our lawyer has stated that that is the correct modus operandi here. Correct?
That's correct, Councillor Gorell.
Thank you.
So the motion still remains on the floor in regards to D 14-2022-009, an application for zoning bylaw amendment for the property municipally known as 322 Stratford Road. Discussion on the motion. Okay, so the motion to defer was defeated. Therefore, the motion remains and we have to deal with, sorry, did you have your hand up?
Sorry, your worship, when the time comes, I was just gonna ask for a recorded vote.
Okay. Well, it's been itemized now. So all those in favor of the motion at hand, please raise your hand.
It's a recorded vote.
Yep.
Thank you, Worship. Councillor Lackey,
I'm in favor.
Deputy Mayor Oki, Councillor Gorell,
Nay.
Councillor Jameson, Councillor Fody,
Nay.
4-2, the motion is lost. Or sorry, the motion is carried. Sorry.
Okay, so it's carried. I've made a note on the motion sheet. Okay, next item on the agenda is coming from Councillor Jameson and seconded by Councillor Fody. That council approved the 2023 operating and capital budgets as per option, and I'm leaving this blank until further discussion as described in the corporate services report SR-02223. The motion is on the floor and there are three options to choose from. So prior to passing the motion, we will indicate which item in the recommendations we are moving forward with. So the motion is on the floor. Discussion on the options 1, 2, or 3. I need a recommendation from somebody around council. Deputy Mayor or Councillor Lackey and then Councillor Grow.
I'm not sure what option. I don't have the report in front of me, but I believe it's the 4.2%.
That would be option 2, I believe. Okay. And Councillor Gorell.
Stand by one.
We have the options put up on the screen, so that might be helpful. I believe option number 1 was, Madam Treasurer, would you like to come forward and just synopsize? That way everybody who's listening, as well as the members of the public, have that.
Through your worship. So option 1 is essentially the budget as presented in December. However, there are corrections made in that original budget as there was a new amount added for the capital budget for the pumper truck. We accounted for the OCIF funding with having received that allocation notice. And we revised the capital budget for Kidd Road North Culvert Project. So that proposed option 1 proposes to leave the capital transfers at $2.555 million. Results in a TLTI tax rate increase of 6% and overall tax rate increase estimated. Obviously, we don't know the county yet, but estimated at 6.5, which equals about $162 a year for an average property assessment of $250,000.
Okay, so that's option 1. Option 2.
Option 2, again, fixing the capital budget numbers based on better information we have in the OCIF funding. It also has a reduction of $200,000 to the capital transfers. So the capital transfers, instead of being 2.555 million, or 2.355 million, which reduces the TLTI tax rate portion to a 4.2% increase. Our total tax rate estimated based on what we know right now would be 5.7%. And that results in about $141 increase to an average tax bill of with $250,000 of residential assessment. Option 3. Again, the same changes I've already outlined. However, the other significant change in this one is we include the Canada Community Building Fund, which is federal gas tax funding. We change our financial plans to include that funding within the municipal budget, take it out of the water wastewater budget. By doing so, we can then reduce the transfers to capital reserves further, so that the transfers to capital reserves would be 2.224 million. Results in a tax increase for our portion of 3% and overall of 5.1, which is about $127 a year increase to a residential property with $250,000 of assessment.
So I'll recognize Councillor Gorell and then anybody else who wants to speak to one option over the other.
Through you, your worship, and to the treasurer. And I really am sorry to bring this up, but the January 9th proposal that you brought up on committee of the whole really took us, the first step was we could reduce by $200,000 the levy. But it left the, if I got it right, it left the capital budget basically the same. Then it came to light that there was an unnecessary amount or a lesser amount for the Kidd Road project. Is it possible, and this takes us away from these 3 possibilities, I'm looking at the fleet capital reserve and how quickly it is depleted by 2024. And I also realize we're borrowing a substantial amount of money for that pumper truck. Is it possible to take the monies? And again, this is not one of these options right now. I just wonder if this is really where my head was at in January 9th. Can we take the extra monies from what would be left in the culverts reserve? Because technically money would be left there because it wouldn't be spent. Can we reallocate it to the pumper truck? And maybe that's not, maybe the reallocation of the reserves, I know we can do that. So maybe that's a further step. But I guess I'm favoring number 2, but I still recognize that we need that capital budget money. And rather than just take it away from culverts, I thought we could sort of move it to the pumper truck and reduce the debt financing, because that was going to be $800,000 of debt. And we could cut that in half, I think. And this is thin ground, and I really apologize for bringing this up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Through your worship. So, I think the simplest answer is if council wished to lessen the amount of debt, we certainly, when I do the financial plan, I show all the reserve funds. I'm really only looking at the bottom line of the total capital reserve funds, right? So we can, at council's, discretion and approval, we can move money within those reserves at any time. So the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund funding, because that's provided by the government, it does have certain stipulations around what we can spend it on. So that one in particular, I'd have to double check on whether we can use it for fleet or machinery equipment, but certainly within the envelope of our capital reserves. Like if we decided we had lots of, well, if we have enough money in the road reserve that we decided we want to pull out of that and fund the pumper truck instead of borrowing the full amount or a portion of that amount, whatever, we could certainly do that at council's direction and approval. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, the possibility exists.
Yeah.
And then.
I don't think you're wrong.
Thank you. I see the possibility exists, but again, I'm muddying the waters and I feel terrible about this really. But if we were to go with the January 9th suggestion that was presented to us last week, and we can still reduce the levy by 200,000, which brings the tax rate down to 4.2. But that also was the full capital budget was allowed in that. And it would appear to me that it's really just a simple question of the $830,000 that was sitting there for Kid Road, culverts, et cetera. If we're only going to use 300,000 of it, as was discussed, I'm just, I guess, simply asking, can we leave that just the way it was, but take that remainder money and put it toward the pumper truck as an example?
Okay.
Is
Through-
that,
Yeah.
that's
Through
as
your,
clear as I can make it?
through your worship, I think, from my personal opinion would be to pick one of these options, just for the simple fact is because I know that there is a couple, like the way the budget was presented last time, there's a couple things now we know better information. So I'd hate to go back to that one because I know, for example, that we do want to budget Kid Road at the new amount.
Yeah.
But what I would suggest is if you wish to take whatever that amount, that difference was, sorry, I forget off the top of my mouth, you could, I'm not sure if the correct wording, but you could tell me you want council wants me to take that difference, whatever $300,000 or $400,000 it was, move it from this reserve over to this reserve, or say you want that money to be allocated to help fund the pumper truck. Like you can give me that direction, like you can pick the best option in this report because I think these ones are more accurate, but you can still, council can still at any time between now and when we go to fund the pumper, you can tell me, no, I want to take this amount of money out of a reserve, whichever reserve you want, really, out of our capital reserves, and we won't have to borrow the same amount for the pumper. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I appreciate, pardon me, I appreciate that we can do that. And again, because I brought this up so late to the game, obviously we don't have the computer printout as to what the ramifications are to the financial plan. And what I was running, again, the best I can do is refer back to what was presented to us last week. It didn't look, it looked okay to me. It's just that suddenly we realized, hey, the culvert issue was coming in well under the established capital budget. But when I look at number 2 tonight, which would be my choice, but we've taken that out of the capital budget. And I guess I'm asking, can we just tonight, could we put it back in if it was the will of council, or can we do that with more thoughtfulness at a later date? If we were to approve number 2 here, for example, is there a mechanism to do that? If it was the will of council.
Yeah, through your worship. I mean, by approving, like, for example, option 2, it now has the correct budget assigned to Kid Road North. So like through the year, when we bring budget to actual reports, you're going to see that more accurate budget number. Those funds will, like, we never pull money out of the reserve until we actually need it. So even though like the kind of the inflated original value, like that money is just going to sit in that reserve. So, I mean, I think probably what would make sense is when I bring a report back to council to fund the pumper truck, because I will have to come back and ask council's approval to actually go borrow the money. And at that point, I would think that would probably make sense. Or having this conversation now, I'll bring a report back at some point to say these are our options for funding the pumper truck, one of which would be debt. And then at that point, I could give options, but you could then tell me, well, no, we'd like to take. That makes, okay.
Sorry. So, your worship, if I understand the treasurer, then regardless of what option we pick, if with respect to the pumper truck and how we manage the reserves going forward, there will be a recommendation coming forward with perhaps some options with respect to how to handle the truck or the culverts or whatever else separate and distinct from approving the bigger picture. So no matter what option we pick, we are not closing the door on further discussion.
Through your worship. So when we approve the budget, like approving one of these options will tie council to say, this is the amount of money you're going to put in the capital reserve. This is the net levy requirement required to fund the 2023 operating budget, which will set the tax rate. On the capital side of things, we have a plan with estimates and we have our budgets, which are estimates. But when I go to fund the projects, there would always be council discretion to say, I'm going to fund them based on the budget, the council approved budget. But if it requires debt, I will have to come back and ask for council approval beforehand. And now between now and year end, when the projects might be done, if council has concerns about some of the funding strategies for some of these capital projects, there's definitely room for us to revisit how we fund the projects between now and when I actually do the accounting or the funding for it. But I always have to come back and ask your permission to borrow. So I can never borrow without your permission. And when it comes to the other capital reserves, council can move money around in between the reserves. That's why I just kind of look at the bottom line, knowing as a total, we don't want all of our capital reserves to go overdrawn, but within one might get overdrawn, one might have extra money. But what I would do is over the next 10 years, I would adjust how I transfer money into those reserves to try to make sure each one of them stays positive, right? So, but I'm just looking high level right now because we're talking, I think it's between $30 and $40 million of capital work over the next 8 years in the financial plan. So it could change a lot each year. So it's
No kidding. Follow up.
Yes, your worship. Thank you, Madam Treasurer. I just appreciate you saying you're planning to be here in 10 years to get all this done. That's the good news.
I'm holding her to that.
Yes, exactly. Now understanding that, I don't pretend to have Councillor Gorell's grasp of these numbers. I really don't. But looking at the options, I for one was arguing very strongly against, if I may continue, strongly against putting what I call the gas tax, because I can't remember the new acronym.
no, sorry, that's Canada Community Building.
Oh,
Fund.
sorry, wrong
Yeah.
one. See, there's too many acronyms.
Too
My
many
apologies.
acronyms and not enough time.
Exactly.
So, and then it is in option 1 and option 2. The gas tax stays with the water system in the first 2 options. So I had the opportunity, I took the opportunity, even though I didn't understand at the time, I didn't need to do it again. I took the water thing again, which makes me equally as uneasy about the water system as I was 4 years ago, except I trust the people here that are managing it just completely. But I think that we need to leave the gas tax. Now I believe we need to leave the gas tax with the water system because we're going to need it. We're going to have to do something. We've got some dramatic challenges ahead and we're responsible for it, whether we live in Lansdowne or not. So that's my first argument for option 1. My second is that if I look at the difference between the cost per $250,000, option 1's $162 and option 3, the lowest one's 127. It's $45 difference per $250,000 of assessment. So we're not dealing with a great deal of money as we move the deck chairs around here. And my own feeling is that maximizing the money we're putting into reserves, given that mid to long-term challenge, and they're really, really real, I would like to see us go with option 1. I'd like to see us maximize what we put aside in the event that some of the things that the asset management program might be wrong and things could hit us a little sooner. I just sort of, it's just my old, make sure you're keeping everything together in the longer term. So that's my case for option one. I'd like to see us go that route. Thank you.
I also should preface this conversation by our preliminary discussions. Tomorrow we're dealing with county budget. And I realize that we need to look at this budget on our own and not, we need to do what we need to do for our municipality. However, I understand that the county levy plays into it because it's the overall. And so the numbers that the treasurer has given us is based off of what has been presented at county, which is a 9.8 increase. However, I already know that it is likely to come down slightly based on just the joint services budget that was presented last Tuesday and some of the recommendations that were made at joint services, which includes the separated municipalities that we work with on POA, paramedic services, community housing, and all of those very big ticket items. So I do know that the 9.8 will likely come down. It would be very unusual for it to go up. So that may or may not factor into your rationale for tonight's option. But we haven't even taken a stab at the operating budget in general for county. And based on the discussion already to date, I would imagine there are some other of my colleagues that are sharpening their knives to take some whacks at the operating budget there. I have my own philosophy about that, but nonetheless, that information is now on the table. Go ahead, Councillor Foti.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to our Director of Finance. I favor myself option two. The main reason for doing so, in our budgets we created in 2019 and 2020, the 19 obviously precluded COVID, and the 20 budget was in the middle of COVID. And we had asked the residents at the time to bear with us while we build up our reserves. I'm hearing a similar echo tonight that we still want to build our reserves. Well, we may always beat that drum. But what I haven't heard up until this year is a number of people asking us to cut every corner we can to save them their costs. We don't need to be told they're getting hit from every possible angle. So if they worked with us for 2 years, I don't think it's a real reach for us to work with them for one. And that would be my main reason for supporting option two. Thank you.
Okay, so as of right now, I've got 3 councillors proposing option 2. I haven't heard from the deputy mayor and where he sits.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just in general, I was a little disappointed to hear roads referred to as spurious, but never mind. I hear very much what Councillor Foti's saying. I hear the same things myself. I have heard people say, oh, tax me more, I can afford it. I heard that more from people down on the St. Lawrence than anywhere else, I must say. I don't hear that on the back roads of Ward 1 or Ward 2. I don't hear the back roads of Ward 3 either. But I think from the sounds of it, option 2 is the direction we should go. Thank you.
Okay, so rather than prolong this discussion based on what I'm hearing around the council table, I'm going to put option 2 in the main motion, and I'll reread the mover and the seconder of the main motion, and then we'll vote on it going forward. Keeping in mind that this will set our tax rate both for operating capital requirements for 2023. So the motion comes forward from Councillor Jameson, seconded by Councillor Foti, that the council approve the 2023 operating capital budgets per option 2 as described in Corporate Services Report SR-022-23. Further discussion on the motion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Thank you, council. So next item is Emergency Management Coordinator. Motion comes forward from Councillor Foti, seconded by Councillor Jameson, that the council grant 3 readings and final passage to bylaw number 23-005, being a bylaw to appoint an alternate community emergency management coordinator, and that council grant 3 readings and final passage to bylaw number 23-006, being a bylaw to appoint an emergency management program committee. Discussion on this motion. It's really housekeeping in the grand scheme of things, but Okay. Seeing no discussion, call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. Okay, next item on the agenda is 10.5, which is Administration Report SR 020 23 Committee and Board Appointments. So the motion is coming forward from Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Jameson. And we have a blank here that council appoint blank to the Cataraqui Conservation Full Authority Board, and that council appoint blank and blank to the Municipal Heritage Committee, and that council grant 3 readings and final passage to bylaw number 23-008 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 22-081 to make appointments to committees and boards established by the corporation of the Township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands. So the motion's on the floor with suggestions to come forward about appointees to that board. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. At the risk of sounding somewhat vainglorious, I'd like to stay on both of those boards, if I might.
Okay.
I declined the library board simply because the amount of reading I have to do, or one has to do on the Cataraqui board. It's almost as much as we're required to do for this board, for council, but I'm quite prepared to do it. And Heritage is only a quarterly meeting.
Okay. So we have a volunteer for CRCA and Heritage. Councillor Jameson, go ahead. Okay. So we would need a subsequent volunteer for the Heritage Committee or anybody else who's looking to put their hand up for CRCA. And Mr. Gorell, you would like to put your hand up for
Heritage would be fine, sure.
Okay. Any other suggestions, or go ahead, Councillor Fody?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I would also volunteer for the Heritage Committee.
So we only need 2 appointees. Is that correct, Madam Planner? So we only need 2. We have Gord, Terry and Brock, who all 3 have put forward. Does anybody want to withdraw their name, or do they want to let your name stand?
I would withdraw my name, given these 2 gentlemen.
Okay. So Councillor Gorell and Councillor Fody still letting their name stand? Okay. Are there any other wishes to join either of these boards? Okay, so seeing no other hands up, I have Deputy Mayor Olkey to go back to CRCA and Fody and Gorell to the Municipal Heritage Committee. Okay, so I'll read the motion again. Moved by Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Jameson, that the council appoint Deputy Mayor Olkey to the Cataraqui Conservation Full Authority Board, and that the council appoint Councillor Fody and Councillor Gorell to the Municipal Heritage Committee, and that the council grant 3 readings, final passage to bylaw number 23-008 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 22-081 to make appointments to the committees and boards established by the corporation of the Township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Okay. So next motion is moved by Councillor Fody and seconded by Councillor Jameson, that council support Mr. Steve Allen to serve as the Eastern Area Representative on the Cataraqui Source Protection Committee. So discussion on this motion. Go ahead, Councillor Fody, and then Deputy Mayor Olkey.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, with the great representation we've had from our now Deputy Mayor Olkey on the Cataraqui Conservation Authority, I'd like you to hear, or like to hear your opinion or comments on Mr. Allen. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and to you. In response to that, I have the highest regard for Mr. Allen. He's highly technically qualified and very well motivated to serve in this capacity.
Okay. Any other comments in regards to Mr. Allen before I call the question? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. So next item on the agenda is the mayor's update. And the mayor's update is as follows. So myself and Deputy Mayor Olkey are attending the 2023 Roma Conference in Toronto from Sunday, January 22nd to Tuesday, January 24th. Some of you may or may not know, a local mayor from Westport is currently the chair of Roma, and she has represented this area well and with great gusto. Lots of wonderful things coming forward in the world of municipal government. So she's been quite busy. So we've been very fortunate to have that sort of representation. Sealy's Bay Frost Fest is coming up, and it will be held from the 3rd to the 5th of February. So if you haven't marked your calendars, please do. Also, I believe Rockport Winter Carnival is February 8th to the
Yes, Wednesday through Sunday.
12th. So also please mark your calendar for that. Both very fun, a lot of history behind them and lots of great volunteers. Next item is Township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands wants to hear from our community about the best way to communicate information. Please take a few minutes to provide us with your feedback by completing our 2023 communication survey. It can be found in our February and March Township Times newsletter and on our website. So we'll be promoting this through social media. And the deadline to complete the survey is Tuesday, February 21st. The feedback would be greatly appreciated. Make sure that you purchase your dog tag for 2023 if you have not already. These can be purchased at the township office using either cash, check, or debit. Very important if your dog tends to wander. It also helps us make sure that they get
Yearly?
it's annual, yeah.
I got mine late in the year.
Well, just get another puppy and then make it turn.
No, is it a calendar year?
Yeah. I don't know. You have to ask the director. of
That's
plan.
$25.
A reminder to residents to renew your burn permits for 2023. So if you haven't done that, please do that, because otherwise our fire chief will be making a call to your residents. Whether you're renewing or applying for a burn permit, please complete the online application on our website. Is there anything else that any counselor would like to add to the announcements? Did I see your hand up? Oh, okay, no hand up. Okay, no other additions and no announcements. Oh, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
I believe there's a meeting towards the end of January involving member of parliament.
Oh, yes.
We have
the chamber breakfast.
Oh,
Chamber
Mayor's
breakfast, yes.
breakfast. Mayor's breakfast.
Very important, Madam Mayor.
Very important. I totally forgot. And it is on the 31st, January 31st. So there will be a mayor's breakfast at the Holiday Inn in Gananoque, attended by myself, the mayor of Gananoque, and our MP and MPP both. So it's fully open to the public, and the chambers are encouraging all the business members to attend, as well as any members of the community at large. So thank you for that reminder. It isn't my calendar, but it wasn't on my list, which is my own fault. So, so announcements, any other announcements? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to number 13, bylaws, moved by Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Jameson, that 3 readings of final passage be granted to bylaws number 23-001, 23-002, 23-003, 23-004, 23-005, 23-006, 23-007, 23-008, 23-009, and 23-0010, 23-011, 23-012. And that 3 readings and final passage should be granted to bylaw numbers 23-013, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of Corporation of the Township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands at its January 9th committee of the whole meeting, January 16th council meeting. Discussion? Call the question. All those in favor, please signify. All those opposed? And it's carried. Next item is for adjournment, moved by Councillor Jameson, seconded by Councillor Fody, that council adjourn. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Thank you, everybody.